Good morning, everybody. Jan Hicks of Jan Hicks Creates here, coming to you today with an update that's all about knitting. So in my usual creative fashion, I am calling this All About Knitting Update 1. Very creative, aren't I? I'll keep my I can't even speak. I'll keep my creativity to what goes on with these rather than, thinking up creative names. So hello, I'm glad you are here. Welcome, welcome. It is 10:55 on September 20th. In Maryland, it's let's see, my watch says it's cloudy, 73 degrees. It's actually partly cloudy, going on sunny. It looks like it's going to be a gorgeous day. Maybe I'll even get outside today. I was outside pretty much, or I was out of the apartment pretty much all day yesterday, so I'm perfectly happy just staying put today. I am surrounded by yarny goodness. So I have, excuse me, because I do have a lot of yarn things to talk about, a lot of knitting things to talk about, there are times when I'll include this in my regular floss tube update, but because I have so much today, it would have made my regular floss tube update too longer than I'm comfortable with. Let's put it that way. And rearrange so the right side's showing. And also I think there's enough here that it will make a nice separate video, not too long, not too short. I don't have a whole lot in that we're not going to go for an hour. We may go for 30 minutes depending on how chatty I get. So I have one finish, one whip, one stash, and actually two plans. One plan kind of morphed into two plans, which I guess that's kind of how it goes. Both in stitching and knitting, there's always more to do. So, the finish. This is what I'm wearing, and I'm going to take it off because it's hot, and I don't need to be wearing this, even though it's only 73 degrees, 72 here in the apartment. It's more wool than I need to be wearing, especially with hot flashes happening. So, you guys knew that I did the test knit for Casapinka of her Crown Wools Mystery Knit Along. That is long since finished. I finished knitting this on July 29th, but I only just this week got it blocked. So that's what I have to show you today. I am going to have to stand up for you because this thing is huge. So, we started down here at this end. And I'll give you a closer up look after I kind of show the whole thing and talk more in detail about what you are seeing here. I did a kind of a fade concept, and I used a lot of mini skeins for this. So let me sit down, pull up close, and let's talk about details. Her pattern is written for Miss Bab's Yummy 2-ply mini skeins, basically the Yummy Toes. The Miss Bab's Yummy Toes are 38 gram mini skeins, 133 yards. The concept for her pattern is that at each stitch chain, and that it's 12, did I say that? 12 skeins, 12 mini skeins. And so there are 12 different stitch patterns in this piece. Excuse me, 12 different stitch patterns, and the concept was that at each stitch pattern change there would be a color change, and you have a transition happening in these garter stitch rows. So you're to be going back and forth between the two colors in the garter stitch border, so that you have a softer transition between the colors. Now, I decided to use mini skeins. I'm no longer, but I had been a member of Space Cadets Mini Skein Club for several years. I was getting it on an every other month basis, but I was getting 10 mini skeins every other month. Those added up. I had a ton of mini skeins. The Space Cadet mini skeins, so the mini skeins, the Yummy 2-ply toes that the pattern calls for, like I said, are 38 grams, and that gives you 133 yards. Excuse me. The Space Cadet mini skeins are 50 gram skein, not 50, 20 gram skeins, which gives you about 50 yards. So I was quite a bit short from what the pattern called for. But since I had so many, I just used more. So what I ended up with was using 24 different mini skeins across the piece. And because I knew I was changing, because I was doubling it, I had to, for the most part, there's a few that I was able to get further along, like the first one, well, even that's kind of halfway in the middle, although we used the first color in the seed stitch border. About halfway through every stitch pattern, I had to change to the next color because I had about half the amount in my mini skein. So you can see, and I did that whole transitioning as she called for that she was doing in the garter stitch. I did that in the middle as well. So 1, 2, changing again, 3, 4, changing 5, changing 6, changing 7, and there's a really obvious change, huh? But that's okay. And so that's what I did throughout the piece, changed about halfway through the stitch pattern. I loved knitting this. I will say that I had knit Goldfish Memories as a sample for the store that I worked at, A Good Yarn in Sarasota. That one got pretty tedious for me towards the end. There was a lot of repetition in the stitch patterns, and I was ready to be done with that one. This one I loved. Between the combination of changing the stitch pattern and changing the colors, I never got bored. And some of these stitches she actually created. This is one that she came up with. You have a basic lace pattern, kind of a basket weave look between reverse stockinette and stockinette. This is a kind of a basic feather and fan, start of a feather and fan. This one I believe is another one she came up with, which kind of gives you a lace and some texture, kind of like mini baubles happening there. It's very similar to what happened in the first one with the baubles, little mini baubles there, but this one has holes. And I don't remember what the stitch actually was because that's been 2 months. Oh, and look, cat fur. What a surprise. So this one I think is another one she came up with, again kind of a variant on the first one, just adding more texture. And you can see everything's kind of offset on this one because this is a bias shawl, so you are increasing on the one side and decreasing on the other side to give it the bias. This one is just a basic slip stitch, and now we're getting into my favorite colors, the teals and the turquoises. Again, this is kind of a sideways slip. These stitches are slipped over top on the needle. This one, these two are actually the only 2 skeins that weren't Space Cadet. This is some leftover that I had from a Sweet Georgia Party of 5. And this is Miss Bab's Yummy 2-ply toes. I got that one while we were in Colorado at a yarn store in Colorado Springs. Isn't that gorgeous? Another basic lace pattern happening here. Another just basic texture stitch happening. And then we get into a little bit of a cable and lace combination. Isn't that pretty? And then to end, I think that's another one of her Casapinka created stitches, and then you end with a seed stitch border. So this was a lot of fun. I recommend if you have mini skeins or odds and ends to use up, just throw them together and start knitting. I highly recommend this piece. It was just gorgeous. All right, so there is my finish. My whip, work in progress, is what I've shown you on my Floss Tube channel. This is the Stickney T, and you have to forgive me for always fumbling over that word, Stickney T. So Stickney Point and Stickney Road is one of the roads that leads on to Siesta Key, and it wasn't far from our house. When we first moved there, and I read the name, Stinky is what came out first. Stickney changed to Stinky. It could be Stinky if there were a lot of fish, and I'm sure right now with what's happening, and I don't know if the red tide and the algae bloom is as bad right now as it has been, but anyway, forever after, Stickney T became Stinky Point. Stickney Road, words, people, words. Stickney Point became Stinky Point for us. And I think I even got Kat to start saying that. So now every time I see the word, I have to think it's Stickney, not Stinky. But anyways, here is my sweater, the Stickney T, and I will pull up a picture for you. Alrighty, here's our lovely Cat modeling the Stickney T. Isn't that pretty? So there's slip stitches going up the whole way around, and you can see they're kind of graduated from more wider apart. So there's 5 stitches in between the slip stitches here, 3 stitches in between the slip stitches here, and on each side it's like a 1x1 ribbing, slip knit, slip knit, slip knit. I am using Elizabeth Lavold's silky wool, and I believe I'm using, I was going to look this up and I forgot, I believe I'm using the called for needles. Kat and I have found that over the course of me knitting many of her designs that we have the same tension. So I usually end up using the same size needle as she is called for in the pattern. So this is a bottom up. I have to knit 14 inches, so it's going to be from the bottom up to my armpit, 14 inches before I start shaping for the arm and the neckline. It's slow going, back and forth between the purls and the slip stitches, and I'm also not working on it a whole lot. I usually only get a couple hours in the evening, but I hope to get this done fairly soon, because there's something in my plans that I'm going to talk to you about that is starting in the not too distant future, so I'm really trying to work on this and get this done. But this yarn is lovely, as I said, Elizabeth Lavold's silky wool. Kat used a cotton, a Barocco quinoa, which is a cotton yarn in her design. I found this and fell in love. I've used silky wool before, and I really like it. Creates a really pretty piece. Okay, so that's my whip. Haul. This is the last kit in Laura Nelkin's End Club. This came yesterday. I did unpack it. I repacked it, kind of, sort of. This was packed more compactly to show you. So Laura always includes, besides the yarn, some goodies and some kind of bigger goodie. So let's go through and see what we got. First of all, this pattern is called Finger Lake. Now her photographer, when they were doing the photo shoot for this, called it epic. So the card may say Finger Lake, but we are going to know it from now on as epic. Beads and lace, which is Laura's forte. It's what she is known for. So the yarn. They're both Neighborhood Fiber Company, which is a Baltimore Maryland located yarn company, Indie Dyer. This is their Capital Luxury Lace, and it is soft. It is 80% wool, 10% cashmere, and 10% nylon, and there's 560 yards on this beauty. Look how gorgeous that is. Again, are we getting into my colors? I love this. Along with that, we have this sweet little skein. This is their loft. It is 60% kid mohair and 40% silk. There's 350 yards. Look at the colors on this. Does that glow? Look at that up there. Look how pretty that is. Oh. I don't know yet whether we will be holding these two together or whether we will be using them interchangeably. What Laura does for her N Club, she has a private Facebook group, and I believe on the 27th, she says, yes, on the 27th, she's going to be doing a live event on her Facebook group to reveal the design, and I can't wait to see. Now, this design does have beads. I select the no bead option for Laura's kits because I have such a huge bead stash. I've mentioned before with all my jewelry making that I will find something. Once I see the design, I will find something in my stash for this. Oh, I can't wait. I love Laura's lace and bead patterns and these yarns. Look at that. So that will be revealed on the 27th. So that's one of the reasons I need to get the Stink Knee Tea done, because we're starting something new. The other goodies were caramel, these kind of cream-filled caramels. I haven't had one of these in ages and ages. The company is, I'm not wearing my glasses, so forgive my squinting. The company is Goetze, Goetze, and Laura says that that is a sweet treat from Baltimore. I've never heard of them. And then the other thing is, this is a little bag. I believe it is shaped like that. I haven't opened it yet. We're going to do that now. So it has a nice little carbiner on it. Again, she had her club logo put on it. Has a nice little thing here. And this is one of these bags that you're supposed to be able to scrunch back up and put back in its little carrying case. You know how those go. Okay, so it's actually attached there. So this is a reusable, obviously. Chico bag is the company name. That little pouch that it comes in goes inside the bag. And that is a nice sized tote. Again, with Laura's logo on it. But that is, she puts on the card that it's great for yarn festivals, so that's going to go to Taos with me. It will be very lightweight and easy to pack. I'm not buying any yarn in Taos. You heard it here first. So thank you, Laura. That is awesome. All right, maybe I have to buy a souvenir skein from Taos, right? That's all. I have to fly back. So I can't be overloaded because we're not going to be bringing a lot of luggage back. I'm just going to be carrying on. I'm not going to even have a big carry-on, just my personal items. So I can't have a lot. Okay, so that was the only haul. Now, plans. And like I said, I had just had one plan, but then that morphed into two plans. So my one plan, as I mentioned, all my little mini skeins from my Crown Wools shawl. I had just had them sitting. I have them kind of all here, whoops, in my pretty yarn bowl. One of my very pretty yarn bowls. But this is all, most of them are about halfway used. This is the Yummy 2-ply, so you can see there's quite a bit left on that. But then there's some that just have this left. So they've just been sitting on my nightstand looking pretty, gathering cat fur as things do around here, when Hunter Hammerson came out with Scintillation. Aren't those pretty? Just little stars, they're knit in the round, double-sided, stuffed. She has pictures in the pattern of them strung on a garland. I mean, just in bowls. Can't you see that, like mixed with the stitching, like my my seaside beachy stitching? How adorable are those? Great little gifts. Make a garland for a gift. They're only supposed to take an hour or two. I haven't started any yet, but mine are going to be in these colors, so they'll match my shawl, because everybody needs little stars that match your shawl. Look how pretty. So that's called Scintillation, and I will be linking all of these patterns that I mentioned below. So I'm going to start working on those. I'm probably going to do a video. I'm going to be using my Addy flips for those. So I'm probably going to do a video showing casting on and working those. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know when that's going to happen. It won't be till we get back from Arizona. The other plan. Stephen Westknit's Mystery Knit Along has been announced. It's called Texture Time. I have done every single one of his Mystery Knit Alongs probably since he's been doing them. I might have missed the first one. But for years I've been doing his Mystery Knit Alongs, and I've loved all of them. There's only one, well, pretty much all of them. There's only one, Rockefeller, that I never finished. I really wasn't thrilled with it. By the time we got to the wings out on either side, I didn't like the yarn I picked. I didn't like the colors I picked. The wings on either side were tedious, so that one never got finished. And it actually got frogged, and I don't even think I kept the yarn. So. Having said that, though, I've loved all of the other ones. They've been fun knits, always something interesting going on, and I love the finished shawls as well. So, Texture Time. Let me show you what I've chosen. As you know, I have a bit of a stash, and this is what I've chosen. So it is four fingering weight skeins and one skein of some kind of lace weight. Although you could use a fingering weight, you just wouldn't get the same texture look. So what he says is, you want to start, so you have a main color, and then you have 3 contrast colors, and then you have the pop. Now he is using in advertising Ching fibers, and their pop is their melted Surrey alpaca, so it's much fuzzier and scrumptious looking. This is Shibui's Silk Cloud, so it's the silk, the mohair silk lace weight yarn that Shibui has. This is actually an old colorway called Rust. When they were discontinuing it and the store was clearancing it, I grabbed a couple skeins. So he calls your main color your frame color. So that will be my black. And then I have the 3 contrast colors. And the black is O Wool's fingering, and O Wool is it's 100% machine washable, certified organic merino, and there are 428 yards in this skein. I got this at Sheep and Wool, I think 2 years ago. Maryland Sheep and Wool 2 years ago. And so those will be combined with these 3 as the contrast, and I love the way those look. So this one is Long Dog Yarns. I've had this for a couple years now, probably. This is Long Dog's sock, 80% superwash, 20% nylon, 400 yards. The colorway is called Grapefruit. I don't know whether that's available anymore. It might still be one of their main colors. And then these are the 2 skeins that I got up in Ontario at Knit Stitch in London. So these are the ones that the owner of the store dyes. Her yarn name is Yarnbird Studio. And this says it is Yarn Bird Studio Soft Sock. So this again is an 80-20 mix, 365 meters. So that's 30, 60, 70, 80, 90. That's about 400. And then this one, she actually doesn't have, I bought it before she was able to label it. And I don't think it's the same. It's still a fingering weight. It might actually be a light fingering, looking at it now. Has a tighter twist, but it's probably still a merino nylon blend by the feel of it. And there's probably a little bit more than 400. It's probably more like 430. But so that and that. So we've got kind of a fade going there, right? With the black as the framework. And then Stephen says that your other color, your texture, fancy color, should be more of a pop. So let's see if I can juggle all of these. So my hands aren't big enough. I think those are a great contrast with those. And then the black, I mean, it really pops against the black. I think that's gorgeous. So I will get these wound and swatch with them. He has in the pattern a swatch telling you how to mix up the colors, interchange the colors, so you get a feel for how the colors play with each other. He also has a couple of YouTube videos out talking about how to choose your colors. Now, I wanted to speak about that because in one of them, he does say, make a comment about swatching, and that, and you know, he talks about the swatch that he put in his pattern, and he says, you can swatch if you want to. I don't swatch, but you can swatch, and things turn out the way they turn out. That bothered me. To have a major designer like that kind of diss on swatching is not something that you want to be teaching newbie knitters or any knitters. I've mentioned before, I've talked before about what I believe about swatching and how important it is. And I'm going to talk about it again because it is a pet peeve of mine and it is something that's very important. So swatching. Yes, in a shawl, it doesn't really matter what your gauge is, with the caveat that you need to be 100% confident that you have enough yarn. At least in the, up until maybe last year, and I don't remember, last year's might have had the same problem. I would say pretty much every single one of Stephen West's mystery knits, there have been people complaining that they've run out of yarn long before the design was over. And they bought what the pattern said to buy. This is because they did not swatch. They did not have gauge. And so if you're just knitting and you don't have like a lot more yarn than what the pattern calls for, if you only have, like his patterns, that this one is, I think it's 382, the Ching yarn that he's using for everything except for the melted Surrey, the skeins are all 382 yards. And then the melted Surrey is 330. So if you buy a skein, and especially he's offering kits from his stores, Stephen and Penelope's, if you buy those kits and you have 382 yards and your gauge is off, you're going to run out of yarn. And that has happened at every single one of his knit-alongs. And people are rightly upset because he doesn't talk about gauge. He doesn't stress the importance of gauge. You've got to get gauge. He's basing how much yarn you need on how he knit that item, and that's the amount of yarn he used. So if your gauge is off, you may use less, but you may use more. And I mean, we were talking about people running out of yarn like at the next to the last clue or the third to the last clue, however many clues are in it, you know, quite a bit before the end of the design. So gauge, swatch for yarn amount. I would also say swatch for fabric, the feel of the fabric. I think Stephen is a pretty loose knitter. I'm a pretty tight knitter. If I use the needles that he recommends, and the same with Laura Nelkin, I know I have to go up 2 needle sizes compared to what Laura uses, because she is a very loose knitter, and she says herself, in fact, in her patterns, because she is a loose knitter, she always goes up from the size she actually used, and then I have to go up 2 more sizes. What she states in the pattern is a size up from what she actually used to knit the design, and then I have to go up 2 more, because if I just used what she recommends, I would have a tighter, smaller end result. I'd have a lot more yarn left over, but I'd have a tighter, smaller end result. Or maybe I'd run out of yarn. I can never remember that, which way it goes. So because you don't really know how that designer, that particular designer knits, you're going to start with whatever needle they recommend, and then you're going to see, are you on gauge? Do you like, if you have plenty of yarn, so you don't really care about what size, do you like that fabric? If that designer is a lot tighter of a knitter than you and you're loose, you may end up with a very floppy looking fabric. So you want to swatch. I don't care if it's a shawl. Scarves may or may not be that important. But again, you want to make sure you're going to have enough yarn. So that is I will get off my soapbox. We are at 33 minutes. I don't want to go a whole lot longer. Who out there is going to knit the West Knits mystery knit? Let me know if you're planning it. Let me know if you're having trouble picking colors. I'd be happy to help with that. And I hope some of you join me in this adventure. Like I said, I love his knit-alongs. Except for that one instance, I've never ended up with something that I thought, I'll never use this. So yeah, I hope some of you will join me. I'm going to get off here now, and I'm going to sit on my butt and stitch and knit the rest of the day. Sounds like a plan. Have a great day, guys. Find your joy. I hope you're finding your joy in whatever way you can, even if it's just 1 row of knitting, 1 length of thread of stitching. If that's what brings you joy, find some time in your day to do that. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.